Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. The Monetary Policy Committee met on 25th and the 26th of January 2016 against the backdrop of weakening global economic prospects as well as increased risks in the domestic economic environment. In attendance at the meeting were 10 out of 12 members. The committee reviewed the ensuing international and domestic economic and financial environments in 2015, as well as the outlook for the first half of 2016. On the global front, uncertainties and geopolitical tensions have increased in the Middle East, leading to a major standoff between two major oil producers, Saudi Arabia and Iran, in the face of improving relations between the United States and Iran. In the global oil market, both Iran and the United States are emerging as new suppliers, while OPEC appears to have shifted from protecting price to defending market share. These developments underscore the conclusion that the current global oil prices will remain for a much longer period. Widespread stock market weaknesses and worsening macroeconomic conditions in China have further exacerbated the already stifling global economic challenges. These uncertainties have blended well with domestic vulnerabilities to affect the monetary policy environment in Nigeria. Committee noted the considerable divergence in global output recovery in 2015 as growth picked up in the most advanced countries compared with slowdown in majority of emerging and developing economies. Following the slowdown in the emerging market economies, the International Monetary Fund in its January 2016 World Economic Outlook revised its global growth estimate from 3.4% to 3.1% and 3.4% in 2015 and 16 respectively. In the United States, growth has remained relatively firm with third quarter of 2015 growth rate revised to 2.1% from an earlier estimate of 1.5%. The country's overall growth in 2015 is expected to be the strongest since the post-crisis recovery began in 2010. Likewise, 2016 growth rate has been projected at 2.6%. The major drivers of this growth remain improvements in consumption spending, supported by a robust labor market recovery, low inflation stemming from soft global crude oil prices, massive and dynamic investments in the non-oil private sector, improved foreign investment demand due to the recent normalization of monetary policy by the Federal Reserve, as well as housing market recovery. Japan's recovery in 2015 remained fragile despite the continuous policy stimulus by the Bank of Japan. The bank's asset purchase program injects 6.7 trillion yen monthly into the economy with the possibility of expansion. However, this has done little to restart growth, which is estimated at 0.8% in 2015. Private consumption and investment spending remained modest in 2015, worsened by rising skills shortages. Japan's outlook for 2016 remained dampened by the feeble response of the economy to monetary and fiscal stimuli. In the euro area, weakening fiscal consolidation and improving labor market conditions generated 1.5% growth in 2015 with prospects for achieving 1.7% in 2016. The European Central Bank further eased its monetary policy stance in December 2015, despite the bank's continuous monthly asset purchase of 60 billion euros, as both inflation and wage growth remained subdued. In the same vein, the Bank of England continued its accommodative monetary policy through its £375 billion monthly assets purchase program, even as it announced a decision to reinvest another £6.3 billion, being the process of redemption of the December 2015 gilts held in the assets purchase program. The bank also maintained its core rate at 0.5% in an attempt to head inflation towards its target rate. Growth in the emerging markets and developing economies decelerated to 4% in 2015, the lowest since 2009, as both external and domestic challenges continued, owing to low commodity prices, financial market volatility, slowing productivity, policy uncertainty, and eroding policy buffers, as well as weak global trade. The slowdown in the majority of the emerging markets has also been attributed to spillovers from weaknesses in major emerging economies, diminishing capital inflows, rising borrowing costs, and other geopolitical factors. However, these countries are expected to recover in 2016 and 2017, with 4.3% and 4.7% respectively. The stance of monetary policy in the advanced economies is expected to remain largely accommodative in 2016, except for the United States, where monetary policy normalization has commenced. Against the background of suppressed commodity prices and slow recovery, global inflation is expected to remain moderate through 2016. Domestic, economic, and financial development. Domestic output growth in 2015 remained moderate. According to the National Bureau of Statistics, real GDP grew by 2.84% in the third quarter of 2015, almost half a percentage point higher than 2.35% recorded in the second quarter. However, third quarter expansion remains substantially below the 3.96 and 6.23% in the first quarter of 2015 and corresponding period of 2014, respectively. The major impetus to growth continue to come from the non-oil sector, which grew by 3.05% compared with the growth of 3.46% posted in the preceding quarter. The major drivers of expansion in the non-oil sector were services, agriculture, trade, contributing 1.42, 1.03, and 0.79 percentage points respectively. The outlook for the fourth quarter of 2015, based on staff estimates, suggests further improvements over third quarter of 2015 growth level. The economy is expected to continue on its growth path during the first quarter of 2016, albeit less robust than in the corresponding period of 2015. This expectation is predicated on the current low global oil price trend, which is projected to hold low over the medium to long term, and with attendant implications for government revenue and foreign exchange earnings. Other downside risks to growth in 2016 include capital flow reversal, high lending rates, sluggish credit to private sector, and bearish trends in the equities market. However, the committee remains optimistic about a gradual recovery in economic activity due to notable improvements in power and supply power and supply of refined petroleum products, improved policy calibration aimed at improving the flow of financing resources to the real sector, and suppression of internal insurgencies, which will boost general agricultural activity. The committee noted the slight uptick in year-on-year headline inflation to 9.6% in December, from 9.4% in November, and 9.2% in October 2015. The increase in headline inflation in November reflected an increase in the food component, even though the core component remained unchanged at 8.7%. Core inflation declined for the third consecutive month to 8.7% in November and December from 8.74% in October, while food inflation inched up to 10.32% from 10.13% and 10.2% over the same period. Consistent with its primary mandate, committee would continue to monitor consumer price developments with a view to formulating policies that will keep inflation in check. Monetary credit and financial market development. Broad money supply rose to 5.9% in December 2015 over the level at December 2014, although below the growth benchmark of 15.24% for 2015. Net domestic credit grew by 12.13% in the same period, but remained below the provisional benchmark of 29.3% for 2015. Growth in aggregate credit reflected mainly growth in credit to the federal government by 151.56% in December compared to with 145.74% in the corresponding period of 2014. The renewed increase in credit to government may be partly attributable to increased government borrowing to implement the 2015 supplementary budget. During the period under review, money market interest rates generally reflected the level of liquidity in the banking system. Average interbank call and open buyback rates, which stood at 1% and 1.5% on 25th November 2015, closed at 4.75 and 4.5 percentage points, respectively, on 21st of January 2016. Between the November 2015 and end of December 2015, interbank call and open buyback rates averaged 0.81 and 0.98%, respectively. The committee noted the bearish movement in the equity segment of the capital market during the review period. The all-share index decreased by 13.15% from 27,435.56 on November 30th, 2015 to 23,826.5 on January 22nd, 2016. Similarly, market capitalization fell by 13.06% from 9.42 trillion to 8.19 trillion during the same period. However, relative to end of December 2014, the indices declined by 31.25% and 28.66% respectively. These developments reflected capital flow reversals accentuated by soft commodity prices and monetary policy normalization in the United States. The external sector developments. The committee noted the ongoing activities in the informal segments of the foreign exchange market, which led to the stoppage of dollar sales to the broad exchange segment, even as the average Naira exchange rate remained relatively stable at the interbank segment during the period under review. The exchange rate at the interbank market opened at 197 Naira to the dollar and closed at 197 Naira with a daily average of 196 Naira 99 kobo to the dollar between November 23 and January 11, 2015. The committee underscored the necessity of improving the supply of foreign exchange to the market, especially from autonomous sources. It also reiterated its commitment to maintaining stability in the Naira exchange rate. Committee's considerations. The committee observed that the last episode of low oil prices in 2005 lasted for a maximum of 8 months. However, the current episode of lower oil prices is projected to remain over a very long period. Consequently, it is imperative to brace up for a longer period of low government revenues from oil sources, which will necessitate hard and uncomfortable choices as the economy transits to a more sustainable source of revenue consistent with economic realities and strategic objectives of the country. In the circumstance, certain trade-offs must be envisaged and duly accommodated. In view of the foregoing, the imperative for consistently sound and coordinated macroeconomic policy has become inevitable. In the medium term within which monetary policy is cast, the need to allow policy to produce the desired outcomes become a key consideration in the policy space. Consequently, the bank is fine-tuning the framework for foreign exchange management with a view to ensuring a more effective and liquid foreign exchange market, taking into account Nigeria's strategic development priorities, with the policies being designed within an environment of regularly ensuring consistency with monetary and fiscal policy. The committee noted that at its November 2015 meeting, it eased monetary policy with a view to increasing the liquidity of the banking system. This was aimed at moderating domestic interest rates so as to encourage indigenous businesses to borrow. While the objective was stabilizing the financial system in the aftermath of the Treasury Single Account, TSA withdrawals, and JP Morgan delisting of Nigeria have been largely achieved, the goal of increasing lending to key sectors of the economy is yet to be achieved as the bank continues to adopt moral suasion to encourage the deposit money banks to support financing for targeted lending to the real sector as well as agriculture, solid minerals, and small and medium enterprise sectors of the Nigerian economy. Despite current challenges, the committee remains guided by evidence underpinned by credible data in its holistic evaluation of the emerging scenario and in its assessment of policy choices. Consequently, the committee believes that given sound and properly coordinated monetary, fiscal, and external sector policies, there is wide room for optimism about the medium to long-term macroeconomic prospects for the Nigerian economy, especially given the clarity in the policy direction of the administration, the various interventions in the real sector, gradual improvement in the power sector, and the reinvigorated fight against corruption. The committee also believes that the effect of softer monetary policy stance adopted in the last MPC should start crystallizing soon through expansion of credit to critical sectors of the economy. In addition, the unveiling of the federal government budget oriented towards social, economic, and infrastructural development is expected to provide the necessary impetus for growth. The committee acknowledged the continuous liquidity sulfate in the system, stemming partly from the recent growth-stimulating monetary policy measures, as well as the tendency of the banks to invest excess reserves in government securities rather than extend credit to the needed sectors of the economy. To this end, the committee once again urged deposit money banks to improve lending to the real sector as part of their patriotic obligations to the country, and enjoin the management of the bank to continue to explore ways of incentivizing lending to employment and growth-generating sectors, particularly the SMEs. Monetary Policy Committee also emphasized the necessity of coordination between monetary and fiscal policies as prerequisite for resolving the nation's economic problems, particularly steering the economy away from oil dependency. In particular, the committee stressed the need for the fiscal authorities to complement the bank's low interest rate policy orientation by properly coordinating its borrowing activities and rates with the bank in order to push the common objective of stimulating banking system credit delivery at low interest rates to the key sectors of the Nigerian economy. It noted that given the current economic reality of dwindling oil revenue and a rather unclear outlook for commodity prices, there will be need for a recalibration of the fiscal strategy to increasingly explore opportunities in non-oil tax revenue. Finally, the committee reiterated its unyielding commitment towards achieving a stable exchange rate regime to ensure more flexibility for sustainable, inclusive economic growth in the medium to long term. Decisions. The committee, in consideration of the headwinds in the domestic economy and the uncertainties in the global environment, decided a unanimous vote to retain monetary policy (MPR), cash reserve requirement (CRR), liquidity ratio (LR), and the asymmetric corridor of +2 and -7 around the MPR. In summary, the MPC voted to retain 1. The CRR at 20%, MPR at 11%, liquidity ratio at 30%, and the asymmetric corridor at +200 basis points and -700 basis points. I thank you for listening.
Thank you, Mr. Governor. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, we have heard the communique as presented by the Governor. It is now time for questions and answers and comments. Let us please remember the ground rule here. Questions, comments must be limited to the issues raised in the communique, as the Governor may not, in fact, will not take issues outside the communique. Just come up, tell us your name, your organization, and one question, please, per person, so we can go in time. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Governor. My name is Godwin Emefiele, Nigeria. And when or where moral suasion fails, what plans does the bank have to ensure that banks lend to businesses?
Thank you.
Student Governor, sir, you did express the need, as the committee's position, on the need to explore other sources of revenue for the by government. Not long ago, there was a directive to banks on the stamp duty. To what extent can this assist government in raising more revenue to service its targets?
Yeah, Governor, my name is Matthew. I work for Premium Times. I'm sure you must be following the reporting on the very massive National Assembly. So, outside. Let me ask you. Don't have any question. Maybe the governor will react to that later. The issue I'm asking now has to do with the fact that since the introduction of the monetary policy on restriction of foreign exchange to some 41 communities, I believe that it's time for us to have the impact assessment. I don't know whether you can share with us what is the impact of this policy on the economy. And is it possible that the CBN is considering also helping the manufacturers of these goods to do the manufacturing here in Nigeria? Thank you.
Emmanuel Yomohai, AIT. You said during your speech that the MPC was fine-tuning a new framework for foreign exchange management, and many had expected that you would probably actually unveil a new framework as at this meeting. Could you let us know what you are looking at? Because some people have suggested a kind of dual market for the interbank market, dual market to allow liberalization generally of the interbank market. And I didn't hear you tell us what's the current level of Nigeria's foreign reserves. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Anis Wali, for Daily Trust Newspaper. So since the last decision to suspend the auction of dollars to during the exchange settlement of the market, the Naira has depreciated. Is there any concern from your side, from the huge gap between the official rate and what we are obtaining at the market? during the change. And number two, sir.
From the Wall Street Journal. Sir, if the dollar, oil price continue to fall, do we see, is there any need, or would there be need for there to devalue the naira? Thank you.
Thank you very much. People have been smuggling in questions with all kinds of links. Well, I think the government can take these ones. Mr. Governor.
Thank you very much. You talked about when moral suasion fails, what option does CBN have to compel deposit money banks to lend to the real sector and the targeted sectors of the economy? Unfortunately, those businesses, deposit money banks are in business to make money, and we cannot regulate interest rates, and so it will be difficult to really force them to do it. But all we can continue to do is to put in place policies that will encourage them to do so, or we can continue to incentivize them also by putting in place policies that will encourage them to do so. It's a free market, and we cannot really compel them as is expected. We will continue to adopt it, and that's the reason why at the last MPC meeting, what we could do, which was what we did, was to say that yes, CRR is being reduced, or was reduced at that meeting from 25% to 20%. And but we now insisted that that liquidity that will be made available would only, those banks can only enjoy those rebates in liquidity if they are ready to lend, if they introduce to central bank projects that will target the real sector, agricultural sector, and the SMEs. You will agree with me that 2 months is still a little bit, I would say, too early to begin to assess the impacts, but I'm optimistic that the banks will eventually heed this advice, because this liquidity indeed is still sitting in the CBN, and until they decide to work with us in this direction, no doubt those funds will not be made available to them. The second question has to do with stamp duty. It says, to what extent can this help? Well, at this time when revenue from oil appears to be a big challenge, we do not have any choice but to continue to support the efforts of government and fiscal authorities to seek other ways to boost revenues. And other than looking at, there are various options that the federal government and the economic team are looking at as ways to boost non-oil revenues. And the stamp duty in this case is one option. The numbers are there in the budget about what we expect to generate from stamp duties in 2016. We will try as much as possible working with the banks to ensure that all transactions are captured in a way that ensures that for every transaction that is carried out, that for transactions above 1,000 naira and above, each of those transactions get debited for 50 naira. We've not dimensioned it yet. I believe in due course, Nigerians will begin to know what this will translate into, but we believe that it will help the efforts of government in improving its revenue. 41 items. Time for impact assessment. You are correct, this was introduced in June, so we're just about 9 months now, about actually 7 months. But I'm happy to say that the impact has been profoundly positive, because if Nigerians recall that before that policy, Nigerian businesses were importing eggs, 20 million eggs daily from outside the country. Nigerian businesses were importing tomatoes, lettuce from outside the country. Nigerian businesses were importing all these items from outside the country, even including fish. The Nigerian coastal water stretches almost close to about 500 kilometers. There are countries today in the world that do not have the kind of opportunities that we have. Yet, they do not indeed. With the little size of coastal waters that they have, they produce fish and export fish to Nigeria. There are countries today who are just oil producing countries with population less than even some of our states. Today, those economies, when there was oil boom, those countries' economies invested the process of their oil in sovereign wealth, and they exported their fish to Nigeria. I think it is it is high time we started to look inwards to say, for instance, some of these items that we need to produce them locally. Production of fish in Nigeria has also gone up. A lot of people are embracing the production and sale of catfish today. What is important about fish is that it is protein, and it is foreign economic activity. And I can assure you that if you ask people, they will tell you how the demand for their products have been stimulated as a result of the restriction of these items. I mean, you must have also read or watched even television, people who produce propylene, people were importing cans, aluminum cans, for Coke, for Fanta, for beer into this country. You can go and ask those companies that produce aluminum cans. They will tell you that their sales have increased even up to 10-fold. It's been positive. But I keep saying it, and I want to go into repeat it. I wish I had the dollars. I wish our reserves were as high as 50, 60, even 40. We will not be in this. It's because we have limited resources, and we need to continue to say, let us prioritize the use of these limited resources for the good of our country. That is what we are doing. We need to prioritize and ensure that only those that want to import essential raw materials, plants and equipment, at least that they enjoy some preference in the allocation of foreign exchange. We will try as much as possible to cover everybody. We want to make sure that where we have obligations to pay, that we pay those obligations, trade obligations, as much as possible. That's what we are doing. But again, I want to assure Nigerians that we are seeking ways to improve the foreign exchange supplies into the market. And as this eventually, we achieve these objectives, these will be unfolded so as to ensure that we improve the liquidity in the foreign exchange market, just like we have said in the course of the communique and deliberation at the Monetary Policy Committee meeting. Fine-tuning, here I talk about fine-tuning new framework for foreign exchange management. My apologies that you didn't get that at this meeting, but I'm sure in the course of time, you'll begin to see some of our efforts that we are putting in place to fine-tune the foreign exchange market, provide some sort of flexibility in the market, and also deepen the market so that business can continue the way they're supposed to be. The foreign reserves is about 28 billion, just for your information today. Somebody talked about stoppage of dollars to BDCs, and that as a result of that, it has been depreciating. Everybody, including the BDC themselves, know that that market is not a very important market as far as we are concerned. It's not as significant in terms of volume. It's about 5 to 10%. But I think it's high time we all realized or agree that the government cannot continue to provide foreign exchange to support the needs of that market. Nigeria is the only country on earth where Central Bank of Nigeria provides cash to meet the needs of bureau de change. We saw a situation where the number of bureau de change rose from 74 in 2005 to almost 2,800. And the activities of bureau de change have not been, I must say, they have not been palatable, and that's the reason we took those decisions. We will continue to work with them because they remain licensed to operate in Nigeria. They remain licensed under the Central Bank of Nigeria. We'll try to see how to assist them to deepen activities in that market, and then so they can source their foreign exchange just like we suggested from the autonomous market. Wall Street Journal, that if oil continues to fall, will there be a devaluation? I can't answer that question at this time. But the only answer I can give to you is that we are already working on different scenarios. The models are being worked on, we have them, and we'll look at them as much as possible. We'll look at scenarios under different crude prices. And we'll continue to discuss at Management and Monetary Policy Committee. We'll try as much as possible to continue to share our thoughts with the fiscal authorities with a view to harmonizing our positions to ensure that, notwithstanding the drop in crude prices, that we are able to continue to run government and continue to do business. We are very conscious of this, and like we said earlier, we are in an era where the drop or the low crude price will remain for a long time with us. It's not going to be like in 2008, 2009, where it was just transient for about 8 months. So far, we've seen this for almost about 14 months now, and there's no green light yet at the end of the tunnel. We will continue to be alive to our responsibilities to ensure that both the monetary and fiscal authorities work together towards ensuring that we provide for all the needs of Nigerians. But again, I'd like to appeal that, yes, some of these actions or policies may be painful, but they are being taken for the good of our people, and the interest of Nigeria and Nigerians must remain paramount. Thank you.
Thank you, Governor.